That is
Some new friends. Tonight, we've got quite a history lesson for you on Jeremy Corbell, who I call the boy who cries aliens and cries alien spaceships. And of course, this is a takeoff of the old saying, the boy who cried wolf, an old wives' tale, but I think a very wise one. After all, how many times could that boy falsely cry wolf before no one cared when he cried wolf? And that, my friends, is the situation that we find ourselves in with one Jeremy Corbell, who it's very clear has an incredible bias and a slant. And every video that he sees that's a little strange or at first unexplained or unexplainable, he sees alien spaceships. And by the way, he has tried to lie his way out. Like, oh, I didn't say aliens. I didn't say it was aliens. They do this dance where it's that old saying. I'm not saying it was aliens, but it's aliens. And that dance has gotten old. And Mr. Corbell's recent project, in which he presented two mysterious videos, have been completely, I think, to most rational people's minds, already debunked that quickly. Not quite as quickly as the Flare video, which was debunked, I don't know, an hour after or 2 hours after he originally broadcast it. You remember that one where he claimed flares were a giant spaceship or craft. And it's this sort of history that I think is important, because history of these people matters. After all, if somebody makes one incredible claim, that's one thing. But what if they've made 10 incredible claims? What if they've made 50 or 100 incredible claims? And then stack on top of all those incredible claims a complete and total lack of evidence or evidentiary support that those things are anything extraordinary. That's what we get with Jeremy Corbell. And history matters. And his track record of pushing everything as aliens, it's getting ridiculous at this point. After all, how many times can this boy cry aliens before nobody cares what he has to say? And thankfully, I think we're finally approaching that point after years and years and years of this man claiming aliens with little or no evidence. Track record matters. And, history matters too. And I get that people want to believe these stories, but how many times can somebody like Jeremy Corbell or his partner there, George Knapp, how many times can they profit from a mostly fake, probably fake, or definitely fake story? These things matter. How many times, also, you have to ask yourself, how many times in your personal or professional life, let's say, how many times would you be 100% sure that somebody has lied to you? How many times would you let that person keep lying to you, continue to lie to you, before you say, this person is a liar and shady and not someone I want to listen to or allow into my life at all? I know my answer for that. I give everybody one or two. But, after a while, if somebody keeps lying to you, the leopard does not change their spots after all. Is he suddenly going to tell everybody the truth? And I love these disclosure dork advocates who put this lying, shady guy on a pedestal. Oh, he's a hero of disclosure. Well, tonight, we're going to go through his entire history, or a lot of it, of his fake stories. And then you can decide whether this man belongs on a pedestal or if he should be banned from this whole thing. How many times is he going to make money selling a completely and totally fake story before we say, that's it, you've done it enough times, you're done here, get out, Mr. Shady, from the Shady Bunch? Now, I know from my experience and my few years of doing this that people would much rather believe the pretty lie then to accept the ugly truth. But even when the truth is ugly, it's worth having, my friends. So tonight we're going to bring you the ugly truth about Jeremy Corbell, his bad standards of evidence, the way that he deceptively manipulates and edits his stories to sell them as something mysterious, when quite often they're not anything mysterious. And now he has a proven track record of over and over and over again pushing something that's not mysterious as something mysterious. And the reason he does that is because he collects millions of dollars doing this. And we know that because he just purchased, what is it, a $1.8 million property, right? And there are some people claiming that he's walking around with a $75,000 watch on, all while creating a docuseries complaining that he doesn't get paid for UFOs while he's walking by a homeless man, and just after he gets out of a reported $135,000 SUV. And he has 3 film deals with Orchard, a monetized podcast, speaking fees. Hey, boy, for not getting paid for UFOs, he certainly is involved in a lot of commercial UFO-related projects and products. Are we all supposed to believe? Are we all supposed to be that dumb that he's going to publicly say in his own docuseries he doesn't get paid for UFOs? Hey, Jeremy, how much did TMZ pay you for that docuseries that you say you don't get paid for UFOs in? The level of arrogance of this man and the denial of reality that you have to live in to believe that he's going to tell you the truth. A guy that's, how many times has he been caught lying? Just the I don't get paid for UFOs lie should be enough that no one would believe anything he ever says anymore. It's public record. Go Google Orchard film deal, Jeremy Corbell. You'll find a 3-film deal that he got. All 3 of those films are about UFOs and aliens, right? But he doesn't get paid for UFOs. How many times are we going to let this guy lie to us before we say no more? No more, friends. We've had enough. So Jeremy Corbell's stories work through completely, totally bad standards of evidence, through the lie by omission. He never presses the witnesses. Oh, and the big bluff. Several times now, he's claimed he has all these witnesses that refute the debunks, right? Oh, can't be flares. I've got 100 witnesses that are all military experts that say they're not flares. Broadcast them. Where are those? Where are the interviews with them? Or did you just lie and bluff because you got caught selling flares as alien spaceships?
Mineral field depleted.
SCV ready.
I'm at a loss. I'm at a loss. But we're going to begin. We're going to begin tonight with. We're going to begin with the lie and the pretending that he doesn't claim that they're craft or alien spacecraft. Yes, he does. An excellent researcher at Like It Matters 3 on Twitter, Charlie Weiser, has an excellent post about that. We'll begin tonight to show you. Let's peel back some layers of deception, right? Where he says, "Oh, we didn't say it was spaceships. We never said spaceships." Well, you said craft 16 times, right? And that's another thing. Interestingly, in our conversation with Brian Dunning from Skeptoid, he was absolutely right in a specific point that he made. In the history, 70 years of people claiming that something is an extraordinary craft or mysterious, out of the ordinary, couldn't be human craft, or whatever you want to say, in the entire history of all of this, do you know how many times anybody has proved it? Never once. Never once. So Mr. Corbell can say whatever he wants. I believe that he purposefully misleads the audience to believe, it's like I said, the old saying, I'm not saying it was aliens, but it was aliens. We're going to put our fair use banner up. And by the way, I just want to mention everything we share is in the spirit of fair use. Some of these things may be comedic parodies and are therefore covered under fair use. This is one of them. But we're also using these videos to criticize, critique, and educate the public. We're discussing these in a public forum here. This is certainly allowable by law and covered under fair use. So let's get into one of the things I have to share tonight. By the way, we've got a very data-rich stream tonight. And most of the sources that I'll be sharing are in the description of this video or podcast. But before we begin, let me also remind you that we are now broadcasting live with a new distribution partner, and that would be Instagram. And they have fixed the glitch or error that previously only allowed us to broadcast the first hour of our broadcasts. Now we can broadcast the entire thing. So be sure to follow me on Instagram. It's at Truth Seeker Show on Instagram. I will be broadcasting every show on Instagram going forward, and we'll be using that account to share some imagery. So anything related to the show will be on Instagram at Truth Seeker Show. So let's get into Jeremy Corbell. And this is a great video by Charlie Weiser, which displays the point that these guys they always try to weasel out of it. Like, we never said it was aliens. Yeah, you pretty much did. You implied, you did the dance, we're not saying it's aliens, but it can't be human craft. Oh, it can't be flares. Can't be this, can't be that, can't be drones. And it always turns out to be that. Balloons, drones. Well, not always, but a lot of the times in the case of Jeremy Corbell, it turns out to be balloons or drones or flares or some other ordinary, prosaic, earthly explanation that these so-called UFO experts all deny in order to still sell the story. Now, one can ask themselves, are they purposefully lying to everybody? Or are they just the dumbest, laziest UFO experts on planet Earth? You be the judge, friends. How many times have they been caught doing this so far? How many more times are we going to let them lie to everybody for cash? How many more millions of dollars? How many more $1.8 million properties is Jeremy Corbell going to buy? How many more expensive SUVs or crazy expensive watches is the UFO community going to buy this lying, shady clown who keeps getting caught pushing ordinary things as aliens, or probably aliens, or it must be aliens, or it's got to be aliens? And by the way, he's sure going out on a limb, and now he's making more ridiculous statements about aliens and UFOs and crafts and trouble covered alien biologics, and we're going to share all of it with you tonight. So strap yourself in. This is going to be a banger tonight. I've had it with this guy.
You remember last week in that show where we declared our belief that this is an alien spaceship, right? An emissary from the planet Kondak, right?
How might it react if it's intelligently controlled?
Was it you who said that?
I'm definitely saying that we have a spaceship. No, I fucking didn't say that. I was very clear.
This was an object. The object was sitting there. So I'm not going to say object anymore. It was a craft. It was a
craft. It was a craft. Here, the $1 million UFO expert who gets paid millions of dollars for his work in UFOs, which, by the way, he claims in his own docuseries he doesn't get paid for. Yeah, it's great. It's great, right? He's calling flares a craft here. This multi-million-dollar UFO expert.
It's a craft. It was a craft. This is something Arrow should know about.
My mom,
This craft, right on top of this craft, it was there to illuminate this craft and what this string of lights on a craft looked like. So this was not flares, not flares, not flares. The craft was sitting there, and while the craft is stationary,
not
and
flares.
you can see the shape of the craft. As it's getting close to that craft, the entire craft disappeared. So this was not flares, not flares, not flares.
my mom,
This is something that was a mass sighting of a UFO, an incursion over a military base. This was a craft. This was a craft. This was a craft.
my mom,
If there is an incursion of an unknown craft of unknown origin that can hover like that with zero sound,
no, I fucking didn't say that. My mom reads UFO Twitter and sends me really mean stuff that people say.
Sure.
Yeah. So he never said spacecraft. He just said craft 27 times. He just claimed that it couldn't be flares. And by the way, we're going to get into the debunk on that and show you that this so-called UFO expert who has had various careers of being, oh, I don't know, a warrior yoga instructor, uh, what was he, an MMA fighter? He was also a quantum jujitsu instructor. Go ask anybody that is actually a jujitsu instructor what quantum jujitsu is. He was also a visual artist and a filmmaker. All the careers of some guy that's never worked a day in his life, if you ask me. How much of all of that did your parents bankroll for you, Mr. Corbell, before you finally learned to cash in on just lying to people about aliens and UFOs, or at the very least, playing extremely fast and loose with available evidence, doing things like denying things that flares over a military exercise could possibly be flares, right? It's ridiculous this guy is making this kind of money. And just to be clear, occasionally I'll get some nasty message like, oh, you're just jealous because he's making more money than you. No. And in fact, I do not now, nor have I ever paid my, personal and household expenses with this show or anything. So unlike Corbell lying to you and saying, I don't get paid for UFOs, well, I don't. The show here gets some support, and yes, we cover UFOs, but I do not use any of the show's income. It goes into till. Anytime our show here needs something like these fancy sets and cool lighting or whatever we decide, it comes out of the till for the show. But I don't pay my bills with show money, and I certainly don't buy $1.8 million properties or hundred plus $1,000 SUVs or expensive watches or anything like that. No. So, these things matter. I don't know what it is with him. I think that he has, perhaps maybe he does have, people are arguing with me that he doesn't have a conscience or he wouldn't keep lying to everybody and keep getting caught with all these fake stories if he actually had a conscience. But there's some reason that he wants people to think he's a working class hero. And I'm here to tell you, if you're buying $1.8 million properties, driving around in a $100,000 plus SUV and wearing a $50,000 or $75,000 watch, you're not a working class hero. You're not. And you should not think people are going to be stupid enough to believe you when you pretend to be. But we're going to get into this man's history of selling fake stories. And we're going to begin with, remember I mentioned he had a 3-film deal. I hear it was a very lucrative deal. After all, those films were on all the streaming services. But according to Corbell, he doesn't get paid for UFOs. I guess he just did all of that out of the goodness of his own heart. Like, can we see the contracts where you accepted no money for those 3 UFO related films? Can we see your tax returns to prove your statement in your own docuseries that you don't get paid for UFOs? Or was that a lie, Corbell? And you need to address this, right? That's another thing. He never addresses any of the criticism. He just runs away and pretends he didn't say things, just like in the example. I didn't say spacecraft. I just said the word craft 67 times in one 2-hour podcast, or however many times he said it. It's ridiculous. But we'll begin tonight with an examination of the abysmal, garbage-peddled films that he has produced. And again, all of the evidence and proof that he plays fast and loose with the facts, he turns things that are not mysterious into alien and UFO mysteries. It's all out there, and we're going to be sharing it all with you tonight. This needs to stop. We need to cut these people from the UFO community like a cancer. And to all you stupid people who think that, he's just doing his best and this and that. Track record matters. History matters. And if we go through the history here, what we see is a pattern of him doing the same thing over and over and over again. Playing fast and loose with the facts, using abysmal fake sources that no real or reputable journalist would trust as the basis of his stories, and more. We begin with Patient 17. Small incision, big mystery. Jeremy Kenton Lockerbie. What is his name? He's got 4 names. They used to call him 4 names. Locker Corbell Film. Since dropped all that pretension, I guess. But interestingly, so this film is about Roger Lear. And people need to know the truth about this story. Roger Lear was a wackadoo. He was a complete and total wackadoo who made all kinds of alien and UFO claims throughout his lifetime. And I hate to speak ill of the dead, but in order to make this a complete and succinct presentation, we have to talk about him. So Roger Lear made various claims throughout his lifetime. And some of those claims involved him removing so-called alien implants from people. But what you need to know about Roger Lear is that Roger Lear had zero qualifications for removing implants from people. And in fact, he was a podiatrist, a foot doctor. You know, stub your toe, got an ingrown toenail, you go to Roger Lear. But somehow, Jeremy Corbell used a wackadoo true believer that saw aliens everywhere, just like him, as an expert on so-called alien implants. And if that sounds ridiculous to you, that's because it is. Now, with regards to implants, it's always been claimed somehow that these implants were put into people so that their ET abductors or benefactors could trace and track them somehow. But even Lear's removal of alleged implants has just shown these to be natural objects, such as ceramic-type materials, metals, or other foreign bodies that somehow made their way inside a human body. And by the way, this is not so uncommon or mysterious, but Jeremy Corbell made a whole film claiming that that was because of aliens. And even if that phenomenon is somewhat rare, people having a foreign body in them, so what? You know, just because a naturally forming substance or metal is found inside someone's body, it does not mean that aliens put it there. There has been zero definitive proof of any alien technology found inside anyone, including this patient 17, that would allow victims to be tracked. There has been zero scientific proof that anything, any foreign body ever found inside someone was any form of alien technology, despite the numerous claims of wackadoos like a foot doctor. By the way, is he even qualified to do surgery and remove foreign objects from people? You know, I'm not a doctor and I don't really know, but I would think that could possibly be problematic, that a foot doctor is just cutting people open, pulling things out of them and claiming that it's alien implants. If nothing else, it's incredibly shady. And most real journalists would run from a story like that, especially considering all of the problematic claims besides the alien implants. Did you know that? Roger Lear made all kinds of crazy wackadoo alien claims, besides being a doctor helping alien abduction victims remove the implants so that they couldn't be tracked. It's totally wackadoo. And there's even a Wikipedia entry about Roger Lear, an important one, that notes, quote, at a MUFON conference in 1995, Lear examined x-rays from a woman who believed she was an alien abductee. He later extracted 2 small metallic foreign objects from her, and also from a second patient. The objects were analyzed by New Mexico Institute of Mining and Technology, which subsequently determined that they were composed of commonly found elements, such as iron or aluminum. In describing some of these elements, the lab report made reference to the composition of meteors. Lear interpreted this to mean that the objects removed from his patients were of extraterrestrial origin. And Dr. Roger Lear, the foot doctor wackadoo who believed in all kinds of alien stuff, he also came to believe that the objects were devices implanted by aliens, and that these implants ordinary earthly metals were somehow, quote, scientific proof of non-terrestrial experimentation on man. Now, we'll get into the more exotic claims made in Jeremy Corbell's garbage film. When someone claims that they have found carbon nanotubes or carbon microfibers or so-called metamaterials, this creates the impression of some form of technology. But if you actually study these things, if you follow the reference below, the references that I can provide about, quote, naturally produced carbon nanotubes, you will see that carbon nanotubes can also form naturally and are found in fluids, rocks, elements, metals all over Earth. But I suggest to you that this is where another interpretation of the alleged evidence occurs, and a spinning or twisting of what is found. In other words, these things occur in nature. They're not proof that of some sort of technological device inside someone. They occur in nature. And people make these fantastic claims. Oh, there's carbon nanotubes you put under a microscope. It's got to be alien implants. No. And before long, this garbage that people like Jeremy Corbell and a wackadoo foot scientist put out is somehow cited as real evidence that objects are being implanted by aliens. And these stories certainly get picked up by the media and film companies that want sensational films that they can sell stupid people, because this form of garbage journalism, clickbait, sensationalized garbage, sells very well. And, I could go on for, we're going to try to keep my presentation as brief as possible. So that's the first film. And let's go on to the second film, The Hunt for Skinwalker, which was based on, this film was based on George Knapp's book. And you remember that story. George Knapp claimed in his book that all the stories were based on mountains of evidence from years of collecting evidence. But in a Joe Rogan podcast, Mr. George Knapp, who this film is based on his book, Mr. George Knapp on an episode of Joe Rogan had to admit that he has no evidence for the stories, even though his book claims that there's evidence for these stories. So, after a while, you have to ask yourself, like, what's going on here? Like, these guys are putting out books and films claiming that their stories are based on reams of evidence. But then when confronted, when asked point blank, where's the evidence on a podcast with Joe Rogan, George Knapp has to essentially do a dance. Or like, there's really no evidence. Which is, it's kind of laughable that that's what we get. If the stories have evidence, I have no problem with people telling. But when you get into this situation that we're in with these two guys, we quickly see that this is ridiculous. So I could spend an hour just on this film and the garbage job they did. And by the way, that's another hallmark of George Knapp, the garbage peddler. Every thumbnail I do with those guys going forward, both Jeremy Corbell and George Knapp, I'm going to put them as garbage men, picking up aliens and throwing it into a garbage truck. Because that's basically the visual equivalent. That's the best way to explain what they do. These are stories, often repeated stories, badly researched stories, but just, still stories. And of course, we get all the funny videos, courtesy of Stephen Greenstreet from the New York Post and the Basement Office. Here's one of George Knapp's stories. This is how ridiculous this shit gets.
She saw this standing on two legs, a wolf standing in her yard, paws crossed like this, leaning on a tree, staring back.
Sounds like a totally true story to me. Here's another one.
This dirt road one night, I see two figures, humanoid-looking figures standing up with their backs to the road.
Vespine Geyser
Look like they're
exhausted.
smoking cigarettes. They had trench coats. Smoking cigarettes, stand up on the road. These guys, one of these, they're shining their lights on the guys, and they turn around, and they were dogs.
So the stories are basically, somebody told me a story, so it must be true. Let's put it in the book and claim we have all kinds of evidence. Let's have my protege here, Jeremy Corbell, who is so fond of saying, my mentor, George Knapp, my mentor, George Knapp. You know what, George? You're to blame. You helped create this monster that is just shoveling bullshit into the world. Congratulations. You made this monster called Jeremy Corbell. You could, with your knowledge, and by the way, there are some things that George Knapp did great work on. So I know he's capable of good journalistic integrity and ethics. He just chooses the cheap and easy route because that's where he gets paid, right? He's got a young, hot wife. She loves money. You know, you gotta make sure you have plenty of money. If you're some old, kind of skeevy dude with a young, hot wife, what are you gonna do? You gotta make the UFO dollars then. So George Knapp could have mentored somebody the right way and taught them about things like standards of evidence, correcting your mistakes. By the way, they talk about correcting their mistakes. We're gonna get it. Oh, we're gonna get into it all. I'm just getting started on these two clowns, right? So Knapp could have mentored Corbell to do things the right way. There were some stories about organized crime in the Las Vegas area that George Knapp nailed, knocked some of those stories out of the park. He's capable of great work. But when it comes to UFOs and aliens, I think he just sees dollar signs. He gets blinded by it. So yeah, he mentored this clown Corbell, and he taught him exactly how you deceptively edit, leave out, information, do the lie by omission, pretend it's something mysterious, even if you're pretty sure you have a great idea what this probably is about. And so the Skinwalker story is filled with people telling stories. It's like modern mythology. We've got dino beavers, werewolves, smoking dogs, wolf creatures, and yes, UFOs, as well as poltergeists. It's a one-stop shop for mystery stories. So no wonder guys like this got into it. But the important part for everybody to realize is that Jeremy Corbell pretends that this is all true stories and they've got all this evidence. And George Knapp pretends they had all this evidence. He even put it in his book that the stories are based on years of collected evidence. But again, during a Joe Rogan podcast, and I missed this. This was pointed out in the great reporting of Stephen Greenstreet at the New York Post. Let's take a listen to George Knapp having to admit that all of his Skinwalker stories, and by extension, all Jeremy Corbell's Skinwalker stories, have no evidence.
But no evidence of any kind back up any of his stories has ever been presented. George Knapp, who's built an entire career around stories of UFOs and the paranormal, and who was one of the authors of the Hunt for the Skinwalker book, was asked about evidence on the Joe Rogan show.
Because they weren't there with the
Any
camera.
evidence?
Like for the first 20 months, the rancher is there. They don't have any evidence because he's not a paranormal investigator.
At this point, Knapp begins telling more stories about UFOs on and near the ranch. Rogan then interrupts and asks again.
Is there any evidence? No, not really.
Mineral field
Oh.
completed.
If you're looking for physical evidence and solid proof, but they don't have any.
Oh.
really?
Knapp saying there's no proof or evidence is quite strange, considering the book Knapp co-authored says this. We obtained an intriguing body of physical evidence to support many of the accounts described in the book. Okay, so where is that intriguing body of physical evidence?
Mineral field
Doesn't exist.
completed.
it's been a long time since Mr. Greenstreet sort of exposed this shady story for what it really is. Which is essentially somebody told me some stories. And it gets worse from here. Now, of course, the story that I am most knowledgeable about that Jeremy Corbell cashed in on. By the way, I just want to put it on the record. I was in communication with Jeremy Corbell. I forgave him the other garbage documentaries. He promised me he was going to produce all this evidence to prove the Bob Lazar story was true. And at that point, I was still on the fence. I had come up with a great deal of evidence that Bob Lazar was a convicted pimp and a liar and had a fake education. He wasn't a real scientist. So, and by the way, I still have those messages, Jeremy. So don't deny what I'm about to say. I asked Jeremy, no scientist